Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video we are going to talk about how to pass a multidimensional array into a function. So before we get started, as usual, if you enjoy the video, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any suggestions or would like me to make a video on a certain topic, please drop it in the comments. Okay, so let's go ahead and declare an array and then a multidimensional array with actually let's do two columns and three rows, and we do that by simply doing this. We are going to initialize it, 3, 4, then 4, 5, right? And then we go ahead and put the semicolon. Okay, so we have a multi-dimensional array that has 3 rows and 2 columns. In each row it has 2 elements and there are 3 rows. Okay, so let's say we want to get the number of rows. How do we do that? We get the number of rows by simply doing this. Let's say number of row, and we divide the size of the array divided by the size of the first element in the array. So what are we doing here? We are getting the size of the array. In this case, we have 6 elements, right? 6 times 4 is 24 because it's an integer. So 6 times 4 is 24. And the size of the first row, what is that giving us? That is giving us 8. So 24 divided by 8, that is going to give you 3. Okay, so let's say we want to get the number of columns. How do we do that? We do that by simply int num of col, and we divide the size of array 0, that is going to be 8, divided by size of int, that is going to be 4. In that case, it gives us 2 columns. Okay. So let's say we want to create a function that is going to add the indexes within it's going to add the elements within the multidimensional array. So let's go ahead and create a void sum function, and in that function is going to take an array um, that has 2 columns. It's going to take a number of rows, number of columns, and it's going to take a variable to store the result in. So let's go ahead and define our function, integer 2, and let's say column, let's say row first, or actually number of rows to stay consistent, and num of columns, and integer result. Okay, so basically we are just defining the function. So how do we traverse through the multi-dimensional array? So first we want to, just to think of the logic of it before we get started, we want to go through every row, and in that row we want to go through the column. So basically, very simple, a for loop, j equals to 0, I is less to number of rows, and then go ahead and add I. And then within that for loop, we want to do a nested for loop. So basically, this is a nested for loop, and integer j equals 0, and then j is less than number of columns, and then go ahead and increment j. Very simple. Now, how do we access the element at that specific array, at that specific index? We do that by simply doing this, array I, j, right? So the array at that specific row, at that specific column. And let's say we have the result. The result is we're going to increment it like this. Oh, we forgot to. Okay, right? Very simple. Now there is another way that you could go ahead and access the um, the element in the multidimensional array. And it's not as simple, but we do it in this way. So first you have the array, and then you add the number of row that you are at, and you basically go ahead and dereference it. And when you dereference it, you want to add the number of column that you're at, and you go ahead and dereference that. So that is another way. It's basically the same thing as this, but I prefer this because it is more neat. So let's say we do this, and after we finish, we want to print out the result. Simply std cout the sum of the elements in the to the array is, and we're just going to print out the result. Simple as this. And let's say here we want to call the function. Let's go ahead and create a variable to store the result in, and we are going to call the function sum array number of rows, number of columns, and then the result. So as you see, when you are calling a function that it takes a variable by reference in the parameter, you don't need to include the ampersand. You can just go ahead and have the variable in the argument. So we go ahead and run this, and we are going to get the sum of the elements, and that is 19 in the array. So just to reiterate what we did, we declared and initialized the two-dimensional array. The number in the first bracket that indicates the number of rows. The second number is the number of columns. We get the row in this form by getting the size of the array divided by the size of the first index in the array, and we get the column in this form by getting the size of the first index and dividing it by the size of the integer variable data type. And then basically we just traversed in the number of rows and then number of columns, and then we just added the result by accessing the element at that specific index. Okay, so if you enjoyed the video, as usual, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in a future video. Goodbye.